And so I said, no, I promised some kids in Berlin and told them the story. I said, you're going to get us in trouble. You can't do that. You got to get permission. I said, the airlift got permission. I promised the guys are going to do it tomorrow. And I'm going to do it. Well, I need your help. And thank goodness they hadn't already bought it. So they gave me their, boy, I had a wad about that big, and it sure smelled good. And I thought, gee, if I dropped that all at once and hit it in the head, it'd make the wrong impression. 115 miles an hour, 90 feet in the air, you might not have time to duck. And so then I said, well, I'll break it up in 3 pieces of the old handkerchief from the rock tree. So I took 3 handkerchiefs and tied the third on each handkerchief, and then rolled them up. And right on the flight deck, behind the pilot seat, is a flare chute that comes out, just like a stovepipe off the flight deck, drop out emergency flare. If you run out of gas going home or something, at night you drop a flare out there and land at the place to land in the farmer's field instead of in the barn. And it's emergency use, and it's easy to get at. The engineer's standing right between the seats, so he just reached over there and shoved it out. So we went back to Berlin. The first time was still early in the morning. The next time it was just before noon. It was a clear day. And came over the field, looked down there, and here are these 30 kids right in the knot. They hadn't told another soul. So wiggled the wings of the airplane. They just went crazy. Boy, they just waving their arms around. Went over East Berlin, came down over the building, had Sergeant Elkins push it out the flare chute. Couldn't see what happened, no rear view mirror. It's up in North Dakota a year ago in a B-1 bomber. They got a rear view mirror. Pretty sophisticated airplane. This old 54 we didn't have. We couldn't see what was happening behind you. So we were worried that somebody might have seen this stuff coming out of the airplane and report us to get us in trouble. And so when they unloaded the flour, we were sitting there sweating out whether some pilot lined up to take off had seen this stuff come out. And the second worry was if the kids had got it, if we pulled it on over the fence or dropped it down the chimney or something like that. We taxied out, take off along the barbed wire, just got lined up along the bar, looked down it, there are 3 handkerchiefs waving through the barbed wire like crazy in all the airplanes. I wish they wouldn't do that. The old Pickering turned to me and he says, hey, do they know who you are? And I said, they don't know who I am. I have a hat on, they didn't know I was already bald-headed. The reason I started to fly in the first place was a recruiter came out to the farm when I was out in the beef field hauling, and I took off my hat and wiped off the sweat, and here was just a young guy, and boy, I had the sun bouncing off my head. He said, hey kid, if you sign on, I'll guarantee you some hair-raising experiences. I never did trust the recruiters ever. It didn't make any difference. I said I had my hat on, they don't know I'm already bald-headed, and so they can't recognize me. I didn't have my name tag on. Pretty informal operation. We wear most any kind of uniform we wanted. And so they didn't know who I am. As we came by, I pulled back the whole slid back the window and waved to all the kids. And all their mouths were going like crazy, so they kept their promise. And after that, go out on our flight, crews would be coming in, and they say, what's the matter with the kids on the other run? They're waving like mad. And the guy said, I thought my landing gear wasn't dying. And he said, I took off and went around to check it. That was a good way they could sometimes. That before he got an airplane every 3 minutes. And so we saw the kids too, waving. The crowd got bigger. 1 week passed, said, hey, some of the kids haven't got it yet, let's do it again. So we did it again. 3 weeks later, we did it again. And boy, the crowd started to get bigger. And then one day the weather was terrible in West Germany. We took off on the gauges, literally took off on instruments out of Rhine-Main for Berlin. Berlin wasn't that bad, but Rhine-Main was. Whole fog bank all over Western Europe. And we didn't know where we could land. We only had enough gas to get to Berlin and back and hold for 20 minutes in West Germany. Of course, we pulled power way back when we make it go about 40 minutes. But we wanted to know where we could get in. And so I got half unloaded, still no weatherman. So I ran into base operations right quick to check the weather to see where in West Germany had the best chance of landing. And we got in there in a huge map planning table, a stack of mail halfway to the city. Some of it flipping on the floor. I said, crap, that's a terrible way to take care of mail. I wasn't getting mail. Aldo was writing to me once in the moon's age. And so I would get a close to look at it. And then I looked at the address. It says, to Uncle Wiggly Wings, Temple Hall, base operations. And Schockel-Ladenflieger, the Schockel-Flyer, base operations. Forgot all about the weather. Ran out and says, we're in great trouble. There's a post office full of mail in there for us. And so we said, we better quit. So we quit. For 2 weeks we quit. And then there was a bigger crowd. Said, once more and that's all. And young guys, that's dangerous. Once more and that's all to get you in trouble. And so be careful of that when you think when you get away with something one more time. So after 2 weeks, we had 2 weeks of ration, 6 parachutes. Came over, wiggled the wings, and boy, you never saw such a Mayday celebration. They went bananas. And so we came around, made the drop, and boy, we were precision bombers. We could have done well if we'd been a bomber command. But anyhow, we waved to them as we went by, and they still didn't know who we were. The next day, getting back from Rhine to Berlin, there was an officer waiting for our airplane. He came up with the gangplank, up the stairs, and he said, "Who's the pilot here?" And both those guys pointed to me, and he said, "He is." I said, what do you want?" He said, "Colonel, I want to see you right quick." When is he, Colonel, on? And he says, "How have we been doing?" I said, "Flying like mad, sir." He said, "I'm not stupid." He said, "What else have you been doing?" And then after about 15 minutes, it made me think I was getting out of the Air Force really. I just been made a regular officer. That didn't sound too good. So then he reached under the counter, pulled out a newspaper, threw it down in front of me. There's an airplane with parachutes coming out of it. He said, "You almost hit a German newspaper guy having a candy bar yesterday. He's got this thing all over the world." So the general called me and I didn't want to come out. I sounded stupid. "Didn't you ever have ROTC?" I said, "Yeah, I had 2 quarters at Utah State." He said, "What did they tell you?" I said, "Well, they tell you to keep your commanding officer informed." And he says, "Didn't you remember that?" And I said, "Sorry, sir, I didn't think you'd approve it." He says, "You're right." And he says, "The general says it's a great idea to keep them." Well, I used all my handkerchiefs. The buddies gave me their handkerchiefs, ran out of handkerchiefs, used shirt sleeves for candy bags and shirt tails for parachute. They'd come back from a flight that had my bed covered with stuff, enough to buy an old car on the black market. And it's crazy. And so the kids in Berlin heard we ran out of parachutes. So they sent back the old ones for refills. They started playing tunes for handkerchiefs in the United States. They said, "We'll play your tune if you'll send handkerchief parachutes to Operation Little Villas." And all of a sudden, the letter I got from Alva once in 2 weeks, I went to get a half bag of mail. And crumb, they said, "Let me see your ID card." I wondered what was going on. Showed it to them, they gave me a half bag of mail. I said, "What's that?" They said, "We don't know what's in the mail for you." The guys that came there for a letter, they get a letter, gave me a dirty look, took it to barracks, and it was filled with letters with handkerchiefs for parachutes. I didn't even know about the letters. Got it to 2 or 3 mail bags. Had to set up a whole organization in West Germany to tie up candy and parachute. The press release that went out also said I was a bachelor. And some of them were black lace, perfume, or rock and roll. I just got a letter 2 weeks ago from a friend of mine that saw a TV thing on it and said, "You remember how we dropped, I got all those lace handkerchiefs and stuff?" And he said, "We dropped them all." And we did. Well, anyhow, the kids in Berlin that didn't get it, let me just get a couple of letters right quick for you. Because I got to hurry on here to get you out of here. But anyhow, the kids write letters like crazy. We took about 6 or 7 mail bags to Berlin, loaded all the mail up. Couldn't read it, of course. Some of them was in English. The base commander of Rhine-Main and Frankfurt gave 2 German secretaries to translate the mail and answer the letter. So we didn't have to. We didn't have time to. We couldn't. And then they give us the best letters that they couldn't handle. And some of those letters were the interesting ones. One of them was a boy named Peter Zimmerman. He said, "I can't run very fast. I never could run very fast. Now I'm not getting any of this stuff. But I've been there right after the kids have caught it. I've seen the parachute, and here's a parachute. Name me a parachute." And he put a map in there. So when you take off from Temple off after you've been looked, go down the canal, second bridge, turn right on the block. I live in the bomb out house in the corner. I'll be in the backyard every day at 2 o'clock, drop it there. So I did that. I had a whole list of special deliveries. In the good weather, we'd have a whole load. We flew with the escape hatches out of the fuselage. On each side of the airplane, we'd take the 54 out there, take a load of the escape hatches. Flew them out because there was so much flour and coal dust in the airplanes that would gum up the control system. And it would get so hard to move, it was flight hazard. So it was easy. We'd just go out, put the engineer back there with a big cardboard box and pop it out the window and go out like popcorn and go all over the place. So I try and hit Peter Zimmerman, but he just kept writing me another week. I didn't get any gum candy yet. He says, "Hey, you put it in the next guy's yard." Finally, the last letter, he wrote, he says, "Look, you're a pilot. I gave you a map. How did you guys win the war anyway?" I took a big package of gum candy to Berlin, and then I mailed it to Berlin in the Berlin mail. You could mail it inside Berlin, but you couldn't mail it to Berlin. So I mailed it to Peter. He finally got adopted. He's living with his uncle, and he got adopted by a German family in Palm, Pennsylvania. He's an American citizen now. A little girl's name was Mercedes, and she says, "Look, you're causing a heck of a problem." Says, "We live right by the airfield. We got some white chickens, and we depend on them for eggs, And you guys are flying right smack over them, and they run the chicken coop thinking chicken hawks, they're not laying eggs anymore. Boy, for an old farm kid, they used to clean out a chicken coop on Saturday when my buddies were going fishing. Not he, but he didn't get to go fishing on Saturday either. Harold did once in a while. But for a kid that knew chickens like I knew chickens, I knew where she come from. But the last paragraph is a payoff. It says, look, when you see the white chicken, drop it there. I don't care if it scares you. Well, I dropped it over the approach, couldn't hit Mercedes. And my buddies, I said, saturate the approach. We can't hit the gal with chickens. But none of us hit her. And so finally I took a big package of gum candy Berlin and mailed it to Mercedes. Let me read you a couple of real quick letters here, give you an example of some of the other letters. This is typical of one that wants to deliver. Now I know your address in the newspaper. I'm glad, believe it. I'll often standing on the park road calling and waiting for something to view. But I could never catch anything because I'm not big enough. The children are 12 and 14 years old, and even the bigger guys pick it up. I'm 8 years old and like to have some sweet stuff for you. But what's to do? Can you help me? Best wishes and good luck. And kids like that, writing 2 or 3 times, we'd send it to them or see if they got it. Here's one that got some. Dear Uncle Wiggly Wings, this is 29 August 1948. When yesterday I came from school, I had the happiness to get one of your sweet gifts. First, I didn't know what to do for joy. I couldn't come home quick enough to show your wonderful things. You can't think how big the joy was. They, all my brother, parents stood about me. They opened the strings and fetched out all the chocolate. The delight was very large. Lisa leaked the mule. Here's one. We've been, for 2 sticks of gum, we've been back to Berlin 14 times. And most of the time we've guessed the Berliners. Here's one from the 1979, 30th anniversary there. This lady wrote me brought the letter out of the airbase. Thinking back 30 years, I so enjoyed the wonderful parachutes. My parents' house was in Lichtenstrasse, the corner of Limestrasse. Today I'm 43 years old and I can remember everything well. After school, we'd go to on guard and stretch our necks longer and longer when a Rosinenbach would fly over our home. So many a tree would be climbed in the Schiller Promenade. Sometimes the sweet gifts would be caught in the treetops, too high. And then we'd pray, dear Lord, let the wind come. Send the wind so that it will untie the parachute, that it will come down. Everything would be divided equally and honestly. And further, we were 4 siblings. If there was only one chewing gum, it would go from mouth to mouth. Everyone was allowed to chew 10 times. In the evening, the good thing would be put in sugar water, if there was any sugar. Then it would be put in by my mother's bed, so that nobody would steal it. My mother had a hard time with us in the gun. We can never again run so fast and climb as high as in those hard but good days. With kind felt regards and thank you, one of your happy children, Inga Tishner. Well, anyway, the letters just kept coming. Some of the best letters came from kids in East Berlin. But look, hope you're not mad at us. But we're going over there in West Berlin, West Communist kids, and we're catching these things that you need for the Free Berliner. But we don't have as much as they do, even with the blockade. They're having more than we do now. And hope you're not mad at us for coming over and catching some of that. We like the Americans. We can't help it if we're stuck over here with the Russians. But we like it. But what we'd like to have you do is have, when you come over and make a turn over East Berlin, drop it over our churchyards and school grounds. Because there's nobody over here to compare to West Berlin. And it would be wonderful for us. So what the heck, kids are kids. People are the same no matter where you are. It's a system that gets screwed up. So I fly over Berlin, East Berlin, and drop to the East Berlin kids. And boy, did they like that. And I've met kids the last 40 years that have grown up, older people now, and they tell me stories about how it was to catch them. One day I came back from Berlin to Rhein-Main. There was an officer meet the airplane. He says, what's wrong? He said, what are you doing over East Berlin? And I said, well, I'm dropping with those nasty communist kids. He says, you can't do that. I said, the law of gravity is the same on both sides of the border. And he says, that's not it. He says, the Russians have complained to the State Department is a dirty capitalist trick to try to influence the minds of young people against them. And they control the airspace over there, and you've got to quit. Well, as I said, I've met quite a lot of East Germans that have grown up and told me about how it was to catch it. Well, very quickly, let me go on here before I keep you. I got to wrap up here pretty quick. Came back from Berlin one day in a snowstorm. in December. Here I thought the airlift was going to be over in July. And all my buddies, the whole squadron was dropping all over the city, come over to high altitude, letters, parachutes coming down in the fog, in the park, and all over, hitting kids going to school out of the fog, and we dropped all over the city because the crowd was too big on the air, next to the airfield. We came back from Berlin one day in a snowstorm in the Rhine-Line, and it was lost to meet the airplane. I said, "What's up now?" He said, "Jump in the Jeep. I got to show you something." Got in the Jeep, went on the other side of the base where the railway line came on the base. There was a boxcar with armed guards around the boxcar. I said, "Who you got in the boxcar?" He said, "I don't know who, it's what. There's 3,500 pounds of chocolate bars in there for you. There's enough candy to buy King Louis Castle on the black market. And we got to have guards on it." So we took it to another place, a secure place. Next week, 3,000 pounds more came. I came back to the United States briefly to pick up an airplane. I was on national television, radio. He said, "How much of this stuff can you use?" And I gave him some ridiculous number. And he sent it by boat and by train down. And we couldn't drop it all. We were just dropping. 22 schools in Chicopee, Massachusetts had an abandoned fire station. The 24-hour operation, putting parachutes and candy together. 825 pounds every other day to ship it to us. We just cut the tops out of the thing, chuck them out the escape hatches all over the city. So we just couldn't drop any more effectively. So just before Christmas in 1948, took 100 pounds of this candy at the time, all my buddies, took it to Berlin, had an armed guard meet the airplane, took it to a jailhouse. We had to find a jailhouse was half empty, locked up in the jailhouse, and then distributed the day before Christmas all over West Berlin, Christmas parties on the ground. When the kids from East Berlin then said, "We'd like to be blockaded. You know, we're not getting anything compared to what our cousins and aunts and uncles are getting over in West Berlin." Came back to the States, talked to Alda to marry me. She had to go over to this part of the base. She might be back here in a minute or two, but talked to her to marry me, and we started Kids Growing. We heard from the kids all through the years from Berlin as they grew up. And finally, I stayed in the Air Force, became an aeronautical engineer, worked on the space program from 1958 until 1970. 1969, the telephone rang at Vandenberg Air Force Base, California. Pentagon called, says the Air Force Colonel in Berlin, that's commander of Tempelhof, wants you to come over and fly over Tempelhof and drop these parachutes to the kids, and the kids are used to catching. All the ballooners have been bugging him, telling him to come and have me drop them for their kids so they can show them what it's like. Will you come? He says, "You bet." Went back to Berlin for 2 days, flew over Tempelhof, dropped to the kids, and the kids are used to catching. Came back, well, the night before I left to come back home, Colonel Clark Tate, commander of Tempelhof, had me at his house for dinner. Every other night, the Germans had me out somewhere in town to some activity. He says, "Come to my house and give me a debriefing." Went there for dinner that night. Wonderful, huge mansion, just a huge mansion for a farm kid. It really blew my mind. Walked in the front door and I said, "Clark, how many bathrooms you got in this place?" And he says, "Heck, I don't know. There must be 5 or 6 of them." I said, "How many kids you got?" "1." "Wow. What do you got? How do you do this?" He said, "The Germans provide it. I lose my housing allowance, but they provide it for the commander of Tempelhof. I have to entertain the whole international community. It's part of my job. I'm doing that. I work all night and work all day." I said, "We have to entertain. Every nationality in the city has an affair going on in the city, has a reception or something. We have to invite them back to whatever happens. That's part of my job. And that's why I have it." And so I went in the house and I said, when I was a kid and had to go to the bathroom, I had to put on overshoes. It was snowing. So that's why I asked you about the bathroom. Dean Court's dad helped cure that in Garland. I appreciated his professional help. But anyhow, what a magnificent place, you know. It blew my mind. Took me in the back room, a huge glassed-in room in the winter garden. Berlin winters are terrible, so they have a lot of window space in one room with green plants to help make you think that things aren't so bad as they are as far as the weather. And he went over there, pulled back curtain, there was a huge bar. Boy, I've been to a lot of places, a lot of bars. I've never seen a better bar than that anywhere, any officers club. And he said, "What do you want to drink, Gail? I got anything you want." And I started to read the labels. Holy cow, like I said, "You sure got a collection." He says, "Yep, anything you got. It's not here, I got it in the basement." I said, "What do you got all this stuff for?" He says, "I have to entertain the British, the French, the Germans. There are 6 mayors in the American sector alone in Berlin. And they have us to some activity in each of those boroughs 2 or 3 times a year. We have to invite them all back. They got a town council, churches, hospitals, streets, yards, the whole city. And we had to have it on our back. It's protocol. The Germans give it to me. I just tell them what I want and they give it to me. It didn't cost me a cent. That's why I got this big house. It's part of the job. And the French, the Norwegians, and everybody, Japanese in town, were going every night. And he said, look at me. He was pretty bad. Chain smoker, a great guy, a wonderful man. And I looked at him and I said, hey, Clark, you got some 7-Up orange juice? He looked at me. He says, what's the matter? You got ulcers? And I said, no, I'm a so-called Latter-day Saint. I'm not a saint, but I've got a certain set of rules that I live by to guide my life, and I respect yours. And I've been in the Air Force, and I've taken a lot of drunk co-pilots and put them in bed through my career. So I know all about it. You do your life, and I'll live mine. Give me some orange juice or 7-Up. He said, I'll have one with you. He said, this does get tiresome. But he couldn't put down a cigarette. Sat down to a loading meal, had a maid, had gardeners, they changed the flowers, and they rolled down the garden, the big bomb showing out that. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. It just blew my mind. And he says, my wife couldn't take care of this house. And we have to entertain, we have help, they come in, the officers club, the waiters, and everything when we have something. And we have a maid full time. She couldn't begin to take care of it. We're gone all the time in the city of these functions. And beautiful candlelight dinner served by a maid. And boy, Clark was glad to have got your job. Shook hands with him and went home. That was July 1969. Back to Vandenberg, back to the space program, was in charge of tracking all the military on orbit satellites. And I couldn't even say that a few years ago. But that was my job. And so I went back, told the wife and kids what a crazy place Berlin was. He had a Mercedes, a driver. The Germans provided everything. So they're glad to have us. Boy, they wanted us in Berlin. There's one place in the world that they loved us. So we went back and December came along, the phone rang. And the guy in the Pentagon says, Halvorsen, you put in for retirement? I says, no. He said, that's good. At that time, you hadn't put in for retirement. You did anything you want to with it. And I says, why? I says, you're going overseas. I said, it's impossible. I'm a 4-year frozen tour. I've been here 18 months, built a new house, I haven't even got the yard completed yet. He said, that doesn't matter, you're going overseas. I said, where am I going? He says, you're going to Berlin. I said, what for? He says, you're going to be the new commander. You're going to replace Clark Tate. The Germans have gone to the Air Force. They want you to replace Clark Tate when he leaves in July. And I said, I don't want the job. He says, you're crazy. And I said, put that in my record. He said, you're serious? And I said, yes, I don't want the job. He said, I got 1,000 full colonels to give the right arm for that job. You seen that house? They got a Mercedes and a driver. They drive the family. They drive the kids to school. It's ridiculous. I said, that's why I want to go. I don't want to go. He says, that's no problem. We got 1,000 colonels to give the right arm. So long. I said, so long. Boy, I wiped the brow. Said, thank goodness. I think we almost got sent to Berlin. And I didn't want it. I didn't want that kind of job. I want to stay in the engineering and the space business. I still had some things I want to do in the space program. And that's not the kind of job. I avoided that kind of job all through my Air Force career. And so we read these. For 3 days we read these. And the phone rings. Same guy on the phone. Colonel Ryan. So the general holds out and says, he doesn't care. You're going to Berlin. Berliners want you. He wants you. You're going to Berlin. So he salutes and says, okay, when? He said, we got 6 months. He's leaving in July. And so I hung up and said, okay. It turned out, I said, how are we going to handle this? I said, boy, it's not going to be easy. Didn't have long to wait. The phone rang again 3 days later. He says, changing your orders. I said, oh, gee, that's great. And he said, you won't think so. I said, why not? He said, you got to come now. And I said, now? Why now? He said, well, they just evacuated Clark Tate. He said, he got sick, taken him over to the military hospital, they couldn't find what's wrong, they cut him open, and he's riddled with lung cancer. And he's on the way, on an airplane now, headed for San Antonio, Texas, the Wilford Hall Hospital. He might be dead in 2 months, you got to come right now, you got to come in Berlin, the deputies here. You got to come now. Well, compared to my problem, that made my problem seem pretty small. Clark Tate, because I learned to really love that guy. Communications we had. He's concerned about his young airmen in the city, how they get along with how expensive it was, and how little they had to do. And he'd go visit them. And so he was a great guy. I had a lot of respect for him, so it hit me pretty hard. And I said, look, there's something you gotta know before we come. He said, what's that? I said, before we come, you're gonna call Berlin and have the bar taken out of my house. He said, you can't do that, that's part of the job. And I said, that's coming out. He said, I don't have to do that in the Air Force. We'll entertain as often as anybody. And we'll show them a good time, but the bar's coming out of the house. And I got a bar that big in the office on the flight line. And it's coming out. He says, that's part of the job. I said, not part of my job. I'll do your Air Force job, but that's not part of it. Not one of the families. We'll entertain too in the officers club, and they can have put in one drink in the officers club on the base across town, but not in my house, not in my office. He says, I don't think we can do it. I says, well, I'm not coming. And I didn't care then, I had enough time in to be crusty after a while, to lose your hair. Oh, and by that time, you just say, hey, wait a minute, that's not. You have to say that before that part of your career, too. Those of you who've been in the military know you either take a stand and see before you, or you try to compromise and it's murder. So you just respect the other people. Every person is a wonderful person. Something about them is wonderful. Respect them and they'll respect you. And so he says, well, I'll call you back. So 3 or 4 days later, I told him, I think we're off, and the phone rang again. He says, look, Holz Apple says he doesn't care what you do to the bars, get to Berlin. Well, he got to Berlin, driving a snowstorm. Landed, met at the airplane, the officer with a big smile on his face, and he says, I'm Niles Greenlaw, I'm your information officer. He says, the bar's out of the house and the refrigerator is full of milk. I said, well, ready to go. And so he said, what's the first thing? He says, tomorrow you got to go to the table, but I got to wrap up here right quick. Give me about 5 minutes time. I'm trying to make it. But anyway, we got to, he says, you got to go to the table at French Airfield tomorrow and represent the United States Air Force honoring the President of France. And the British commander of the British Airfield, Gatow, and the French commander will be there to be at the head table. It's a stag-only thing. It's going to be a big affair. They stand room only, but you're going to represent the American Air Force. It's great. I'll be there. Next day, ran me in that Mercedes over there. I still marvel at that. Had a command set in the back. I pick up the phone, call West Germany. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. And headed across down the table. French officer, standing room only. A sea of waiters around there in white jackets, foreign legion French waiters, with silver trays full of champagne glasses. And loaded all the way around the room to take care of this crowd. And I knew what was going on right away. And so I turned to my French counterpart and I said, look, Mario, I said, we're going to have a toast to the President of France, right? He said, yeah, that's what all this was waiting for. And I said, look, I got to have something else to drink. I got to have orange juice or 7-Up, or equivalent. He says, we got orange juice and 7-Up, we haven't got equivalent. I said, well, that's all right. His English, still his French was a whole lot better than my English. I mean, my French. His English is better than that.